Happy Saturday, everyone. Yesterday, Friday, January the 24th, I was flat. And the reason I was flat on this day was because there was a lot of conflicting information. So let's just start off by looking at what the higher time frame looked like. And by higher time frame, I mean looking at the 1 hour and also the 4 hour. So around and the going into market open on Friday in pre-market, I mean bars are we don't really have a lot of movement bars. If we look back at, let's say, Tuesday or even Wednesday, I mean, we can clearly see nice movement even on this pullback overnight. On Wednesday, again, we see nice movement, but on Friday or Thursday night going into Friday, bars are kind of like stacking on top of each other. We don't see the same amount of movement, and price isn't really creating distance from the daily. And recently, this is just something that I've noticed is that whenever we have like an overnight session, like yesterday, to where price isn't moving and we are just struggling to get any type of movement, that's a strong indication that we will have some pretty crappy price action, or we'll get some chop. And just going into the New York Open, I was kind of like a bit worried because we barely had any movement. Price wasn't really going anywhere overnight. And in the New York session, I mean, we're right at the same price level as we were at 9 o'clock last night. So that's just again a red flag that I'm like, okay, let me just be a bit more patient. Price hasn't really been moving, and then we can even see this on the higher time frame and pre-market until we actually get this huge red sell candle. And if we look at it from a higher time frame, like a higher perspective, volume just could have been low on Friday, but also like this just looks like a pullback to me. It doesn't mean like, oh, going into next week I'm gonna be bearish. It just looks like, yeah, we had a crappy price action day, maybe due to low volume. But again, we have a nice higher low here. So going into next week, who knows? Possibly we can continue to ride the trend higher, look for some nice longs, and hopefully we get a bit more volume to kind of like get the market to move a little better, like we saw on Thursday after that choppy open, but also Wednesday, Tuesday, we also caught a bit of movement more towards the afternoon. But same thing on Friday, just because just looking at the pre-market, I mean, we're just cutting through the daily. Price really, it looks a bit indecisive. Here we start to form some higher lows, but again, this higher low gets taken out. And going into this, I wanted to take the bounce play right here in the open, but we had news at 9:45, and then we also had another newscast at 10 a.m. So the news is what really kept me out of taking a long, because even though I was like, okay, we're cutting through the daily pre-market, we haven't really been moving too much. It is indication that we may have some like chop. I still wanted to put on some risk. But again, what kept me out is the news and just also how little price has been moving. So I'm glad I didn't take a swing long here, because if we just look later on in the day, I mean, it just kind of like goes down. But to be fair, I mean, I didn't see any setups that were good for me to take. In hindsight, I could have been like, oh yeah, you could have gone short right here after break and then retest of the New York VWAP. But if we look at the 15-minute, I mean, around this time, we still have not taken out this previous higher low. So why would I be eating in short? It just doesn't make sense in terms of the rules and the plan that I have for myself. I'm sure other traders could definitely possibly take this short, but it's just not within my game plan. It wouldn't make sense for me to take that as, my own individual person. Like I'm in control of myself, right? So that is why I just honestly could not take a trade today, because there was so much conflicting information. 4 hour and 1 hour says we're making higher highs, higher lows. I'm not looking the short, right? The lower time frame, kind of like the 15-minute, it is just saying, okay, like we don't know who's in control. I mean, we're just cutting through the daily. We're not really moving. Price is literally just like stacking on top of each other. This is like, I don't really consider this movement. I mean, we're constantly going back to the same price, back down to the same price. It's just, we're not really going anywhere. So again, in these types of market conditions, I'm happy, dude, to stay out until I have a clear picture and I have like a clear direction that aligns with my plan. I'm not going to try to force anything. I'm not going to try to force any trades and be like, okay, let me just like let me just like put on some risk. Let me just put on some money. And I'm really happy on how I was able to stay flat today, because honestly, the old me, like I even said, what really kept me out was honestly the news. Just me being patient and waiting for the news, right? But I am grateful that news was today, because if news was not on this day, I probably would have bought that bounce, to be honest. And then boom, it just immediately goes right against me. And I would be like, oh, well, why? Well, it's like, okay, well, just like look at the market conditions. Look how like there's just no clear direction. You could say, yeah, there's higher lows right here being formed, but again, price isn't going anywhere and hasn't been going anywhere all pre-market and pretty much all day. So, and even then, I mean, just looking at this, I mean, I don't really have any type of shorts that I would like to kind of get onto this. And just because, again, I want to be following the big trend, and the big trend is like, it's telling me it wants to go up. So on Monday, we're going to look to see if this is actually our bottom in the uptrend, and if we can continue to move higher. So that way I can look for some longs next week. If we're going to have a deeper pullback, then my bias may switch to short if we are able to start making some lower lows and lower highs.